Eric Shesky's Weekly You Demon. This Catholic dude abides. So sit back with a sarsaparilla and enjoy.
Alright, big show today. I think it's going to be pretty lengthy. Last week came in at almost 32 minutes, and I think this is going to be bucking up right around 30 minutes again. I like to keep them right in the 25-minute range, but maybe I'm rambling too much. But we had a lot of good stuff. We're going to be talking about Gnosticism. We're going to be talking about a guy named McLuhan, holding hands during Mass, Pride and Prejudice, all sorts of other topics. A while of diversity, I guess. Maybe one of my most diverse podcasts to date. As always, thanks for listening. So I see one or two dioceses in the United States have kind of clamped down on too much touching during Mass because of the flu season. Hallelujah to that. I mean, it's the middle of the cold and flu season. Why do people have to shake hands? If you'd asked me that question 10 years ago, I'd be like, well, of course you shake hands with people. That's just a common courtesy. But man, I got a flu a year ago. I came down with it January 2nd. For the first time in my life, I finally realized how someone could die from the flu. Without necessarily, having, dysentery or something like that goes with it, and dehydration, dying. But how basically a middle-aged person can die of the flu. I wasn't sure. I felt like I may not make it. And then, what's even worse, after that 2 or 3 day ordeal was over, I didn't snap back from it for like a month. And I can virtually guarantee it's because I contracted the flu from someone on my hand, touched it to my face, and it got in me. It's like, it's just not that important to shake hands. It's not that important to give the sign of peace. Now I am, as you all know, a G.K. Chesterton type guy, and G.K. Chesterton pointed out something that I thought was absolutely brilliant. Well, actually said a lot of things I thought were brilliant. But he talks about an old rusty gate in the middle of a pasture, and he says, the reformer says, what's this gate doing here? I don't see a reason for it. Yank it out. And Chesterton said, I replied to the reformer, no, stop. Tell me why that gate is here. And if that reason no longer applies, then yank it out. And I'm with Chesterton on that. Don't get rid of something because you don't understand it. Get rid of something because you do understand it. And you understand it's no longer relevant. Otherwise, if we have it, unless it's obviously evil, but if we have it, it gets a presumption of legitimacy and needs to be preserved. That's what the traditionalist like me says, and I think it's quite frankly borderline common sense. So I shift over to the handshake. It's like, well, Shesky, you just don't get rid of the handshake because you don't see what it's for. That's true. And I will further acknowledge that maybe there are intangible benefits to the handshake that I don't understand. But based on everything I've read online, and that's like the extent of my research on the topic, so I could be wrong. Maybe I've been lied to by these 2 or 3 sites. But based on everything I read online, the handshake comes from 200 years ago, where men would walk up to each other and present their hands showing they're not holding a weapon. And you show your hand, and that evolved into the handshake. Well, we ain't exactly a dueling culture anymore. When you're walking up around the streets, you're not packing a weapon that you need to show your friend, hey, I'm not going to stab you here with this knife. And you sure as hell don't need to do it during Mass. Show people you're not carrying a weapon. So if that really is what the handshake's for, it's time to get rid of it. And then needless to say, holding hands during the Our Father, I've never understood that. In fact, when I first became Catholic and it started becoming kind of a thing, I'm going to tell my wife, I said, if we either start singing the Our Father and or start holding hands during Our Father, I'm out of here. I can't do it anymore. Not leave the Catholic Church, but I'm not going to this parish anymore. Well, dang it, if both didn't occur. And, now you see people holding hands during Our Father, and they go through all these gyrations. I see them bending over the front of pews and getting all these awkward positions, and it's just absurd. and I hate that just in general. Quite frankly, shaking hands doesn't really bother me, although it does bother me that frequently during Mass, when you go to shake someone's hand, it's like they had their right hand lodged in their armpit or some other crevice of their body for the past 5 minutes. And it's all warm and sweaty, and it's like, freak, what is this? So it's just kind of disgusting. But put that aside, I don't usually mind shaking hands. But the holding hands during the Our Father, I've never understood it. I detest it just as a matter of aesthetics. And I can't believe how many people go along with it. I'd also point out that some priest friends I have said, if you look into it, it's totally illegitimate too. It's not supposed to be happening. In fact, I've talked to very few priests who think it's cool. They just kind of go along with it because, hey, we got people in the congregation, they want to hold hands during the Our Father. We'll let it go. I will tell you this, though. It's my understanding that this holding hands during the Our Father is part of that 1960s leftist type horizontal worship idea. That worship is not vertical, us to God. It's really God among us. It's all horizontal. And that's a bad thing. So on ideological grounds, I would oppose the holding hands. But be honest with you, I really don't have any sound basis to object to it on liturgical grounds like some of my priest friends. I'm not convinced I'm right. That's part of the horizontal worship movement. And it all comes down to the fact that I just don't like holding hands with people that aren't in my family. Anyway, so if you see me at Mass, hey, just ignore me. Give me the peace sign, nod, maybe a fist pump. I'm okay with those type of things. But, man, don't hold my hands during the Our Father. And especially during cold and flu season, let's not shake hands during the sign of peace either. That works well for me. Alright, I'm going to make it a novel assertion. Laptops, tablets, and iPhones have returned the family to a previous era's level of sociability and intimacy. And I'm talking like more than 100 years ago, back prior to electricity, 300 years ago, 400 years ago. And here's my Exhibit A as the dispositive proof. Pride and Prejudice, the movie. There's a scene in that movie, the one with Keira Knightley. In that movie, there's a scene where you see all the ladies sitting around in the parlor, just lounging around. And I had my daughter Meg, who's a big Jane Austen fan. I showed her the picture and I said, tell me what each character's doing. And she said, well, Elizabeth is reading a book. Mrs. Bennet is cross-stitching. Jane is reading a notebook. Mary is cord-stitching, whatever the frick that is. And then Kitty is looking at something. Meg couldn't tell exactly what Kitty was looking at, but that's what she was doing. Okay, now switch over to 2019. Elizabeth is reading a book on her Kindle. Mrs. Bennet is watching a YouTube video. Jane is texting her friends. Mary is tweeting. Kitty is looking at Facebook. That hit me a while back when we were all sitting in my family room. Me and Marie and a bunch of my kids. And I realized we're all on a screen. I'm reading a book on a Kindle. Marie's like on the Chromebook. And we're all on a different screen. But then periodically, one of the kids would pop up and say something. Hey, look what I saw on this Twitter. Or here's what I saw on Facebook. Maybe I'd read something from the Kindle book I was reading. Probably not, but maybe. And to be honest with you, the sociability in my family, when we're all sitting around the family room like that, is so high that if I'm trying to read a serious book, I go downstairs to my study to get away from the family because I can't concentrate because the interruptions from the interaction, from talking, the face-to-face interaction resulting from using these various screens in the same room is so high I can't concentrate. My concentration is just snapped so frequently, it gets frustrating. Again, so I make that choice. I say, okay, I'd rather be in the family room with my kids than downstairs, sequestered in my study. But I have to make that choice because the sociability quotient is so cotton-picking high. Contrast that with the era of big radio, the Lone Ranger. That was before my era, but I guarantee you when the family was sitting around in the 1920s, around the great big wooden radio, listen to the Lone Ranger, if one of the kids started crying, the dad was saying, shut the frick up, I'm trying to listen to the Lone Ranger, man, or Amos and Andy, whatever it was. Switch over to TV, the Mary Tyler Moore days in the 1970s. When the family sat around and watched TV together, there wasn't a lot of talking. During commercials, yes. But during the TV show itself, you're all sitting there and you gotta look at the same screen. And therefore there really was no reason to really interact a whole lot because you're all focused on the same thing. You could talk during the commercials or between the half-hour sitcoms. And so it's my position that this has actually, been a good thing for families and sociability to have these various individual screens as opposed to one great big screen or one radio. Now, so take it for what it's worth. You can disagree with me. It makes me no never mind. Well, as long as we're talking about screens, the iPad, iPhone, and whatnot, probably a good time to bring up the character of Marcia McLuhan. But before I jump into that, let me go through an anecdote that Marcia McLuhan liked to recount. It's from 1949. There's a psychotic World War II veteran named Howard Unruh. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that. But he went on a rampage where he killed 13 people, then barricaded himself in his house and exchanged gunfire with police. In the middle of the gunfire, a reporter called Howard on the phone. Howard stopped firing, picked up, said hello. The reporter said, "This Howard?" Howard said, "Yes." The reporter said, "Why are you killing people?" Howard responded, "I don't know. I can't answer that yet. I'll talk to you later. I'm too busy now." Click. That anecdote really interested Marcia McLuhan. Marcia McLuhan was a household name in the 1960s. If you were an adult back in the 1960s, you would have known who Marcia McLuhan was. Unless maybe you lived in the Appalachia and didn't own any shoes or have electricity. Marcia McLuhan made a name for himself by examining media. And by media, he pretty much meant anything that amplifies one of our properties. So, a bullhorn that lets you amplify your voice would be a medium. Radio that allows you to bring in signals that you otherwise couldn't hear with the naked ear is a medium. Television that brings in signals and shows that you would not be able to see because you don't see them live. That's a medium. So it's a pretty broad term. And McLuhan's primary message was, the medium is the message. And what he meant by this is, as soon as you have a medium, it changes you in ways you can't perceive. So McLuhan's whole point, and there are other thinkers who agree with him on this, his whole point is to hell with what the content of the medium is. So if you're watching TV and you're watching the news, or you're watching a documentary, or you're watching a sitcom, or you're watching Hill Street Blues, whatever it is, if you're watching it on TV, the content doesn't matter. TV's having an impact on you. I think McLuhan would have been fascinated by the telephone, as indicated by this anecdote he liked to relate. According to McLuhan, the telephone is a very cool medium, and he distinguished between hot medium, or hot media, and cool media. Those are like his buzz dichotomy. A hot medium is one that intensely extends one of our senses, like the radio is a hot medium. It's only the ear and a lot of it, but it leaves the other senses free to do what they want. The telephone, on the other, he called an extremely cool medium. The ear doesn't receive much information, forcing the user to participate, to fill in the gaps. And he said it was that participation of the phone that made it so absorbing. He pointed out that in a live performance, if a telephone starts ringing on the stage, they know that people in the audience start feeling an antsiness to pick it up. And when someone's on the phone, they're extremely distracted because they have to fill in the gaps themselves. I found this fascinating because when I first got my cell phone, I remember I was walking back to my law office, which is about a mile from our house. And I walk to work frequently, did back then, do now. I pretty much always take the same route. And I remember I called a client on the phone while I was walking back to my office. And I talked for like 5 minutes on the phone. And when I hung up, I couldn't for the life of me remember what route I had taken. And I should say, I don't take the same route every time, but I have like 3 or 4 routes I take. And it took me a second to go back and recreate where exactly I'd walked from. I wasn't even positive where I had been walking. That's what McLuhan means by a cool medium. He goes, it really, really absorbs your attention. And that's one reason why I think talk on the cell phone, even hands-free, to be honest with you, talk on the cell phone ought to be illegal. Or actually, what I should say is, I think if .08 blood alcohol level ought to be illegal, then talking on a cell phone ought to be illegal. Based on my own experience, and maybe other people are different, but McLuhan would beg to differ, and he's still considered the expert in these areas. Talking on a cell phone is at least as distracting, or makes you as much of a bad driver as having 3 or 4 beers and go out driving. So if .08 blood alcohol level is going to be illegal, so should talk on the cell phone driving. Now, I'm not sure either one should be illegal, but there you have it. But anyway, if you wanna delve into the thought of Marshall McLuhan, don't. His magnum opus is a thing called Understanding Media. And it is a thick book, and it's written in that 1960s weird way. They say he was intentionally opaque, and I slogged through it. A guy named John Peterson, he was a former publisher of Gilbert magazine when I was the editor. He recommended it to me, and I went through a biography of McLuhan, which is great. And I'll try to post it to the show notes page. And I read Understanding Media, and I just did not enjoy Understanding Media. I think it gave me some insight, but I didn't enjoy it that much. But again, the key thing of McLuhan is the medium is the message. When you're using a certain type of medium, it's having an impact on you in ways that you yourself don't know. And when all of society starts engaging in a certain medium, like in the cell phone, there's going to be wholesale changes, wholesale effects that we're not going to necessarily see right away, but they're going to come, and we really have no control over it. But anyway, if you want to delve into McLuhan's thought, I would probably recommend a book by Neil Postman. Some of you might know him. He wrote a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death, which is a pretty good book, and it touches on some of these themes. If, however, you want to read a book that really kind of flushes out McLuhan, and then a guy named Lewis Mumford who kind of taught the same thing, the idea that to a man with a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. If you want to kind of flush out those thoughts, check out Neil Postman's Technopoly, The Surrender of Culture to Technology. There he really hits the McLuhan and to some extent the Mumford angles and gives you a good insight and clear, readable prose. So I definitely recommend that Neil Postman book. Either Neil Postman book, but definitely Technopoly. Alright, lightning segments. The heck with Hulu TV. I go to watch the Patriots-Chargers game. I want to see Phillip Rivers, 8 kids, one on the way, devout Catholic. I want to see him tear up the Patriots. Didn't happen. So I go on to Hulu Live, and they told me I'd be getting NFL games. I go there, type in my zip code on their website. It says I get CBS Sports. Go play the game. Not available. After like a half an hour with a Hulu representative, I find out that they don't have an agreement with my local CBS affiliate. Therefore, I am effectively blacked out. Absolutely outrageous. So I guess we're going to go DirecTV. It's going to save us a lot of money through AT&T. So I guess something good will come of this. Long-time readers of my blog know that I'm a big fan of Cedar Point. I just love it. Compared to Walt Disney World, or rather to Disney World, I'm not sure why you'd go to Disney World when you go to Cedar Point. Granted, I've not been to Disney World in 25 years, so I'm sure I'm not being fair to it. A lot of people I really respect go to Disney World all the time, so no offense to them, but Cedar Point, being with the proximity and the price, can't be beat. A friend of mine knows I'm a fan of Cedar Point. He sent me some excerpts from a book he got from an autobiography of one of their former executives. An executive wrote that Michigan accounts for like 1/3 of Cedar Point visitors, and that Michigan people tend to be far more willing to travel a lengthy distance and not consider it lengthy. She said, for instance, people would drive from Grand Rapids to Cedar Point and consider it not a long drive, whereas people from Youngstown, Ohio considered it a long drive, even though it's a lot closer. Cedar Point is so happy with their Michigan customers that they actually tried twice in the 1970s to open up another theme park, once in the Irish Hills, which is like right smack dab in the middle of Michigan, but towards the Indiana border, and then once in Battle Creek. Both times they ran into obstacles they couldn't get around. Hey, a little bit more on Marshall McLuhan. I think I failed to mention that he is a Catholic convert and daily communicant. He was not a Catholic writer. I always distinguish between a Catholic writer, which is someone who writes like a Catholic, and a writer who happens to be Catholic. McLuhan's more in the latter camp, a writer who happened to be Catholic. kind of funny. He was always on the lookout for how media was influencing people and advertising, things like that. At one point, he was sitting on a subway in Toronto with a friend of his, and he was looking at an advertisement. There was an attractive woman drinking a Coke from a straw. McLuhan looked at his friend, gestured towards the sign, and said, "Coke sucker." So his friend just responded, "Marshall, keep your voice down." I've had quite a bit of experience with McLuhan's and Postman's and Lewis Mumford's observation that to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I got a flame weeder for my expansive vegetable garden, and man, when I go to town with that thing, it's like everything looks like a weed. I'm just torching everything. It's pretty cool. Back in high school, I bought a spotlight. It's like 5 times the strength of a car headlight. That was a complete menace. Like, everything around my small town seemed worthy to shine a spotlight into. Surprised I didn't get the cops after me. I'm throwing down the gauntlet. I'm calling fraud on the people who keep saying those who sing pray twice. And maybe I'm just being mean, but there's a monk who I really like and really respect. He has a beautiful voice, and twice I've heard him say that. St. Augustine said, "He who sings prays twice." Well, based on what I can see, Augustine never said it. At best, he might have said it, but no one can find where he said it. And we have a ton of Augustine's works. Plus, it just seems so smugly self-congratulatory. It's like, hey, I sing for 5 minutes, therefore my prayer is better than yours who prayed for 10 minutes, or 9.5 minutes. People who are into music just don't appreciate those like me, who suck at it, who can't sing. We don't want to sing. And then it's like, well, yeah, but so you're not singing twice, ha ha ha. And again, I know I sound like kind of a jackass saying that, but musical people, have pity on those of us who are not musical. Don't tell yourself, well, everyone can sing if they want to. It's simply not true. Some of us just suck at singing, and we don't want to be heard any more than maybe a fat person wants to be seen in a bikini. I took my 3 youngest kids to see School of Rock with Maria and my mom last week. The musical went up to Grand Rapids. It's excellent. To be honest, the first half moved a little bit slow, except towards the end it really picked up. The second half was excellent. Highly recommend seeing it. If you get a chance, check out the song "I'm Too Hot for You." It's hilarious. It's about a guy who's dumping a girl because he's just too good looking for her, and the lyrics are just insulting and pretty funny. I was surprised to see that Andrew Lloyd Weber was still alive. And that guy's been a household name since like the 1970s. So I looked him up on Wikipedia and I found out, geez, not only is he still alive, he's only 70 years old. Unbelievable. Those who aren't aware, you got to start with Jesus Christ Superstar and just rattle off one hit after another after that point. What's even more startling is he's a conservative, a Tory in England. He's a member of member of Parliament as a conservative. He resigned now. I think he's had some health issues, but guy in show business, probably the biggest name in show business. He was knighted by the Queen because he's in show business. But yeah, he's a conservative. That's pretty wild. He's also nearly a billionaire. According to Wikipedia, he's worth approximately $900 million. Hey, I want to give you guys some advice about priming. Priming is when you see something, even at an almost subconscious level, and it has an impact on you. I know advertisers have been accused of just like flashing things like their products on screens, and you don't even know you see it, but all of a sudden you're really craving, say, a chocolate candy bar. Whatever it is that they flash subconsciously. Priming is real. There are studies recently done that had a bunch of subjects who were shown a dollar sign for 1 second or 2 seconds, but they saw it, and then they went into group discussions, and the figures are pretty significant. The number of people who were primed by seeing a dollar sign were far more contentious and difficult to deal with in the group setting after they saw the dollar sign. So just try to keep that in mind going forward. And you can also, by the way, it's not just negative priming or being prompted to do something. You can do positive priming. Last week I just ran to buzzsaw at the office. And this so happened on my phone, I had my Kindle app open and I was reading the mindfulness chapter in the Virgin Eye. And I found myself just taking a breather occasionally and open up that app and just seeing the phrase mindfulness and recollection just tended to calm me down automatically. It's really pretty remarkable. Yeah, it takes literally like 5 seconds to prime yourself with something calming or something good. So give it a shot maybe in some of your more hectic days. Try to prime yourself with something that's calming. Alright, I did a Theology on Tap lecture last Wednesday. Went quite well. The topic was Gnosticism. Quite frankly, it's a topic that's long fascinated me, primarily due to the work of Eric Voegelin. Some of you have probably heard me mention Voegelin before. That's Voegelin, Voegelin. He was an Austrian immigrant, fled Nazi Germany. Or fled the Nazis, rather. I don't think he's ever in Germany. He is from Austria. But fled the Nazis, came to the United States. He's a professor at various spots, including, I think his primary professorship was at Louisiana State University. And Voegelin, and of course he was an historian primarily, but kind of like a historian philosopher. And he, in the course of his studies, kind of constructed this history of Gnosticism. It occurred to him that Gnosticism, the very earliest Christian heresy, had the same attributes for the next 2,000 years, and it's really never ever left us. So he was able to trace Gnosticism from like the early ones like Marcion, Marcion, and Valentinus, through to the Middle Ages, up through modern Gnostic movements that he identified. Like in this very century. And to my knowledge, he's the first one to ever do it. And I really got into Voegelin and studying his thoughts on Gnosticism. I know it's been adopted by various Catholic thinkers. I think I heard Mitch Packwell even talking about it on EWTN. So I don't want to say it's mainstream. It's not by any stretch. But Voegelin's analysis of Gnosticism has many adherents. And I don't think anyone necessarily denies, there's some real accuracy here. These ancient Christian heresies coming all the way to today. Let me go through what Voegelin posits as like the 6 traits of Gnosticism. I got them written down here. I'm not going to read you a Voegelin. I'm going to give you my summary because to read Voegelin is like a full page. But here's the 6 traits of the Gnostic. The Gnostic is dissatisfied with life. The Gnostic blames the world, not himself. He looks at the world as being poorly organized or the product of an evil god, something like that. The Gnostic believes salvation is possible from his source of dissatisfaction, but again, because he doesn't put the dissatisfaction with himself, but rather with the world around him, he thinks change comes from changing the world, which is point number 4. It takes wholesale change of the world, not of himself. You have to change like the order of being. And 5, you change it by human action, and that's human action as informed by special knowledge. That's the gnosis, the Gnostic part of it, the knowledge. The fundamental trait, though, that special knowledge, what the Gnostic has, is often this horrible vision of reality, or what Voegelin would say, a vision of existence. So in Voegelin's terminology, you have the transcendent and you have the immanent, IMM. A-N-E-N-T, the immanent. It's like the spiritual and the mundane. But again, it's the soul and that's the body. And the Gnostic, in one form or another, denies one of those parts. So the ancient Gnostics, they denied the mundane. According to Marcion and other ancient Gnostics, who claim they're a Christian quite often, but they claim that there was an evil creator god, and this earth is the product of the evil creator god. And therefore everything in the world was evil, and therefore you had to eschew it. No sex, no eating, no nothing. You want to minimize as much as possible any involvement with earthy type things because it's all a product of the evil god. Back with the ancient Gnostics, and then later on with medieval Gnostics, as Voegelin traces it forward, that took a pretty bizarre turn. It manifests itself in a thing called pneumatic antinomianism, basically spiritual immorality or amorality, because the ancient Gnostics, the ones who denied any legitimacy to the earth, took it the next step and said, hey, this earth stuff, this body stuff sucks so bad, and me being so spiritual and so far above the earth, I can go ahead and enjoy the earth's fruits, and I'm not even going to be enjoying it. So I'll just go ahead and bang as many chicks as I possibly can, get as drunk as I want, and I'm not even getting a kick out of it because I'm so spiritual. For me, it's just like something totally different. I'm one of the elect. I got this special knowledge. And then there are a variety of groups like the Cathars, the Alumbrados, the Brethren of the Free Spirit, the Adamites, free sex, free orgies, real libertines, some of the earliest examples of that. But now shift forward to closer to our times. You have what Vogel identified are the modern Gnostics, and they denied the spiritual. So like the ancient Gnostics denied the earth, the mundane, the modern Gnostics denied the transcendent, the spiritual. The modern Gnostics are like the Nazis or Karl Marx and the communists. And what's fascinating is you go through those 6 traits, and the communists and Nazis had the exact same philosophy, basically. They're often unhappy individually. They blame the world around it. They're going to change it with special knowledge. That fits Marx to a T. It really does. And all communist movements fit the Gnostic characteristic. And Vogelin's like, it's the exact same thing that the ancient Gnostics taught, except instead of denying the spiritual, instead of denying the mundane, they deny the spiritual. And just like the Gnostics, they are very, very dangerous and a menace to the well-being of society and the earth in general. Vogelin brings that down even further. He later on draws in the hippie movements. And if it wasn't Vogelin, it was people who think, kind of adopted his ideas, pointing out that a lot of the peace and love movements of the 1960s had the strains of pneumatic antinomianism that you would have found in the ancient Gnostics. A lot of modern political movements that we have today with us are Gnostic in character. But this segment's gone on a little bit too long. I'm going to go ahead and flush this out a little bit more next week and trace out these Gnostic ideas. Alright, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the show. As always, thanks for listening.